Oh, wow, Katie, you are a black void.
Oh, well.
No.
We're not talking, but this isn't about her personality. This is about how she looks on camera.
Welcome to My Living Room and another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. I have with me in person my co-hosts, the handsome bitches,
William
and Katie. William came to visit for the weekend, and so we're all here in person.
Yay! I got a haircut too.
In case you're keeping track of Bill's hair changes.
Well, half of our Black Sun comments are about Katie's hair, and the other half are about how Foxy Maria looks. So
I know!
It's about time that people recognize my effort.
I've got fans, apparently.
I know I like Foxy as a description.
I know, it is fun. I've never been called Foxy before. It's just not been a description that has been used about me before, so I'll take it.
Today we decided, since we're all in person, we would do a Q&A. We have previously taken questions from our patrons on Patreon and from you guys in a couple of posts, and I'm gonna answer a couple.
We are. We're gonna answer some questions, guys. We're here. We're doing the hard work that you asked us to do. We have 2 cameras. This is quite the setup.
I was gonna say, very cinematic. Hey guys, and then when we need to emphasize something,
hey guys.
Meet me at camera 2.
Will kind of organize the questions in an order. So he put 3 as good palette teaser starter questions.
Wait, you did an organization for it?
Yeah.
I'm serious business.
He is serious business. So it's some general starter questions, then questions from our Patreon, because you guys get first priority. So the first question was, here for the memes and nothing else, asked, what are your literature backstories? Does your love of reading come from studies or simply being a pastime? Also, whose idea was it to start a podcast? Let's start with the last one because it's the easiest one to answer. It was that guy. It was Will.
It was me, guys. And I've talked about this, I think, in the Priory video, but it's worth going over again. I, in an attempt to be a sociable person and not a recluse, joined a book club. And their first book was Priory of the Orange Tree, and it was terrible. And I literally the day I finished it, I mean, the book was terrible, but then also the discussion group was terrible. No one said anything interesting, and most of them didn't even say anything. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. If I'm going to read books, I'm going to do it with smart people. I'm doing it with Maria. I'm doing it with Katie. And I'm incapable of doing things and not trying to monetize them. So I was like, we're doing it as a podcast.
I mean, fair enough for Will. He lives off commissions.
That's true for my artistry. Warhammer miniatures.
At first I thought it was just going to be an audio podcast. And then Will was like, no, we're doing a YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, bet. I can be content.
Well, basically what it was is that I work with a lot of video I work with a lot of video anyway. And so I was like, okay, we might as well. People like other people's faces for whatever dumb reason. And so I was like, if we're going to be putting it on YouTube, which I would just put an audio version on, we might as well record it in video while we do it. And so that's how it was born. And now we're much bigger on YouTube than we are on any podcast app.
Yep.
So,
well, also SEO stuff on YouTube is super helpful.
Yeah, I know. YouTube is much better about recommending.
Absolutely.
Yeah, stuff.
Okay, so literature backstories. Katie, let's start with you. What is your literature backstory? Was it academics? Was it simply pleasure? Was it a trauma-filled childhood? What's your answer?
I hated reading until I was around 12 or 13. And then I read 2 books. I read Aragon and I read Tithe by Holly Black. And that got me into unabashed romance as well as fun fantasy. And then I became very obsessed. And that's literally all I did, to the point where I literally canceled on people for, yes. So yeah, then I really began reading mostly fan fiction, honestly. And then, of course, in college, we all majored in some form of English literature stuff. And then it became really academic based. And then I didn't read for 8 years. And now I'm reading again. So here we are.
Yay. Okay. My literature backstory. I didn't like reading until about the age of 8. My mom is a huge reader, like books on books on books in our household. She was always reading. To this day, she reads all the time. And she tried really hard to get me into reading as a kid. She tried reading Harry Potter to me, but if you've read Harry Potter as a kid, the first few chapters are real boring. And I did not know that like you had to wait a while for a book to get good.
Crazy boring.
As a kid. So she tried reading it to me and I like dipped real quick. But then I was in 3rd grade. I had a teacher named Miss Spalter. Shout out, she'll probably never watch this, but Miss Spalter, you started a thing. She read Harry Potter aloud to us in class every day for about 20 minutes after lunch. And we got to the Troll in the Dungeon Halloween portion of the book, and I was invested, and she was not reading fast enough for me. So I went to the school library that day during media center. I got the book. And I gobbled it up. By the time I finished the 2nd book, they'd finished the 1st book. And I was on the 4th book by the time they were on the 3rd book. And I just started reading voraciously for I think it was my 10th birthday. My mother bought me like 10 giant books, one of which was like Philip Pullman's, his Dark Materials series. And I just started reading like everything. I think I read almost every fantasy. I read every fantasy book in my school's library by the time I finished 5th grade. And then it got to the point that my mom...
Oh, yeah. I did that too. I was a library aide and I freaking read all those books.
And then I never liked I'm okay with nonfiction, but I never loved it. And then like realistic fiction I wasn't here for. I was a fantasy little trash baby. And then it got to the point where my mom was spending so much money at Barnes & Noble's feeding my habit that she started giving me her books. And so in 4th grade, I started reading this book called, and my mom sat me down and she handed me this book.
Oh my God. I was going to mention it if you didn't.
Yeah. She handed me this book and she was like, yo, Maria, you're not allowed to tell anyone you're reading this. And it's got some stuff in it that I need to explain to you what it is. And so we had a whole discussion on consent because this book had a scene in it. And she was like, this is an adult book. I'm giving it to you because like, I know you can read and understand it. And it was Clan of the Cave Bears. And I gobbled it up. And about 3/4 the way through, I let it slip that I had told like all of my school friends that I was reading this book. So she took it away from me and she wouldn't let me read it.
Oh my God.
She would let me finish it for a year. So in 5th grade, I finally finished it. And I just like, I in 5th grade, my teacher would ask me questions about stuff and people would be like, why are you asking Maria? And she was like, because if anyone knows, it's Maria. Like she reads all the time. Look, guys, like, look what she's reading. And I was like, which started my love of being an absolute know-it-all. So, you know, thanks, Dr. Wolfson. Another positive influence on me. And then, like Katie, I had, in college, I went into English. I have, as you guys know, a master's in literature. I also like started writing because we didn't mention this, and I guess we should because literature. Yes, I started writing in 3rd grade after so very quickly after I started reading a ton. I was like, I want to be an author.
After you decided you couldn't be an opera singer.
Yeah, after I decided I couldn't be an opera singer, I swapped to being a writer.
But you actually can sing is the funny part. Like all girls think they can sing, but you can actually sing.
I'm okay.
I'm well aware I cannot sing.
You.
You said all girls.
Meh. Present company excluded.
Yeah, I definitely cannot sing.
But yeah, and so I did go through like Katie, a period of a couple years where I wasn't reading, but I downloaded Audible when I started driving back and forth from my mom's house. Like from where I lived to my mom's house, which was a 4-hour drive, and the drives were killing me. So I started downloading audiobooks. Since then, I've been reading pretty much all the time. Now I used to listen at the leisurely 1 speed because who was in a rush? And now I'm at like 1.7 pretty regularly. So it's academic for me. I very much like the analytical side. I enjoyed every like English course where we had to tear into stuff and look at like, I know Will's the one that like talks about structure and stuff all the time, but I too enjoyed all of those things and the theory. I got really into like theory rabbit holes and stuff like that. But truly it started from pleasure.
100%.
Will.
So yes, Maria likes to call this my villain backstory, origin story. So kind of like you guys, I didn't read a lot till I was about 10. But that means like books I read on my own. My mom from a very, very young age read to us, and we would read at night. And the thing is that like I was homeschooled and I love my mother deeply. And she takes reading like very seriously. So she would like stop the book and ask us questions about it. Like
I remember you said that and I was like, I mean, at least she's doing her job.
So we would like stop and talk about what the characters were thinking. What was the author trying to say? What were the themes? What was like the morality of what's going on? I specifically remember talking about The Black Cauldron, which is in the Pride and Chronicles, which is like my formative fantasy series. Most people's are Lord of the Rings. Mine was Pride and Chronicles. I actually kind of want to go back and reread it with you guys to see, which I think might be kind of cool. And then about 10 or 11, I started reading. I was tested when I was 12 and found to have a college grade reading level, which I think we probably all did by that point if you were reading Clan of the Cave Bear.
In 7th grade, I did like an SAT, like a PSAT, and I scored on level for like a 12th grader as far as my reading. My math was not, math was not good. But reading, I was always incredibly advanced.
Yeah. Also, as a writer, I knew from the age of 5 I wanted to be a writer. And so in my head, I was always writing things. And part of it, I think, is just a disassociative mental illness thing where like I could always have a story in my head going that I could go back to and think about when I was not feeling good and stuff like that. I didn't really actually start trying to write till I was like 15 or 18 or something like that, pretty late. But my formative experience, so there was that with my mom, and we did that till pretty late. We would read books together, and we still like talk about books and stuff. And then at about 15, it's funny you mentioned Aragon, because one of my biggest formative moments in being able to read critically and write was I was part of an Aragon hate forum.
The second book made me hate it.
Yeah. So, the thing is, they had a lot of like really good writing advice and criticism and stuff. And so that's one of the places I really learned even more so how to like think critically about books. And that was like when I was like 16. And honestly, I don't actually think I've gotten any better at criticizing books since that point. I feel a lot of my skills have more or less just stagnated from then. But yeah, and then in college I went and did, I was a major in English, and I read none of the books I was assigned. Pretty much from the age of about 16 till literally about like a year ago, I just kind of stopped reading. I didn't really have as much time for it because like you can only read when you're reading. You can't do other stuff. And so like I just never quite had enough time. I read fan fiction intermittently during that time, pretty obsessively at times. But part of the reason I wanted to start the podcast is because I wanted to get back into reading, partly because I find I write better when I'm reading a lot. Absolutely. It's much easier, which is ironic because now I have no time to write because I'm editing the podcast a lot. But I've really liked doing this and being able to think about books again and like actually experience different things. And
it's the most I've used my English degrees since I got them.
Yeah, it's true.
How old were you when you read Aragon?
I think I was like 15.
Yeah, I was in 7th grade.
I was in 5th grade.
Yeah. Bear in mind, I'm like 3 years older than them. That's why I'm so much more mature.
I think I started writing when I was in 6th grade, and I wrote poetry only.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. I only wrote poetry until I was like 15, and then I wrote a Naruto fan fiction.
The first thing I ever wrote, and I remember
I've written a lot of Naruto fanfic.
Vividly, was the prologue to a book called, and I quote, School of Sacred Dragons.
Oh yeah,
you told me about this.
And it was like a house burning down, and I was like, I was so into it, I was late for school. Like I nearly missed my bus. And so I started with fiction with the idea that I was going to publish the great American novel, and like the Aragorn guy who published at like 18, I was like, I need to beat that guy, so I'm going to start early. And I realized very quickly as I start, like by the time I was 16, I realized, no, my writing's not that good. I have to wait like until I get like, and you keep writing and practice, but with the intent, with the idea that like, you're not going to publish at 18, Maria. Like it's really dumb. Holly B asks, how did everyone meet and become friends?
Well, let's start with the earliest chronological.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Even if it's the least important.
This fucking dude.
Once upon a time, Katie and I went to a high school together that you had to like apply to get into. So a lot of people weren't zoned for the area. So a lot of people like didn't go to middle school with the people they were going to high school with. Katie happened to go to that school.
To the school where everyone knew who each other were?
Yeah, because a lot of your kids from your middle school.
Oh, it was a sister school.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would never have gotten in.
I did not. I came from a school 45 minutes. I lived 45 minutes.
Oh my God, she lived forever away.
And we did not become friends until senior year. But in freshman year of high school, I was reading Tamora Pierce's Wild Magic series.
Oh, yeah.
And Katie saw me reading it. And I think I let you borrow like the second book, and then you let me borrow the third book, and we were talking about it, and like...
Can I just say really quickly how weird it is that you guys actually buy books? We were poor, and we never bought any books. I literally have maybe 3 books that I've bought full price.
Oh, no. My grandfather would bring me to Barnes & Noble for 3 hours, and I would look through the books, and the ones I felt really dedicated to, I would buy, and he would spend like $100.
No, we only ever use the library ever. Even today, if I need a hard copy of a book, I'll go through the library.
And I still buy the books.
Support your local libraries.
If I really like it, I'll buy it. But I try buy from like independent booksellers now. Anyway, but the point is, despite that connection and obvious mutual interest in things, we did not actually become friends. I actually, in my freshman year, became friends with one of her best friends.
My childhood friend. We were not best friends at the time. She had grown apart from me. But she,
you guys still saw each other.
Well, we were like cousins.
Yeah. But anyway, and it wasn't until senior year, the second semester of the senior year of high school, we happened to switch classes, and we ended up in,
AP
web
design
and
and
AP Psych. And we just like, she saw me watching
a Korean drama that was like Mulan essentially. And, I looked over and I was like, she's not doing her fucking work.
No.
And meanwhile, I was just like fucking working so hard on the stupid thing. We had to make a banner for a website.
With a flash animation. It was great.
And mine was a writing hand. And hers was a cute little, it was like really nice. It was a hummingbird going through like with an instrument and.
Yeah, it was very elaborate. But we became friends because of that. And like we bonded like real hard all throughout college. I went to a different school. She went to one that was farther away. So we were friends for like 3 months and she fucked off. Like rude as fuck.
Then she came over my house at one point, and for our AP Psych class, we had to create a photo album of our future like life together, or not us, but it was supposed to be like a girl and a boy, but there weren't enough boys. So she and I did it together, and it is
one of the best things.
We had 4 weddings.
We had 4 different weddings. We opened a bakery called the Two Fat Cats Cafe. But anyway, during college, in my junior year of college, I took actually at the end of my spring semester. So again, spring semester, that's when I made my friends apparently. I had come back from a study abroad to Japan. And I came back and I was in a sci-fi writing course. And some of you like have heard this story because we talked about it a little bit.
The Poet's Tale.
And unbeknownst to me, Will scouted me out as like a potentially smart.
What happens is that, again, I am not very socially fluent. So in classes, I would always be like, okay, who do I want to be friends with? Like, who do I want to work on being friends with this semester? And so I always sit in the corner on the first day to scope people out. And I saw Maria and I was like,
I'm sorry, look.
What?
There's a lady. She wants to come inside.
Oh, cats. So I scoped out and I was like, okay, Maria, she sounds smart. And so that class is a little infamous to me because I hated everybody's writing but hers and like one other person's. Everybody else's writing was trash. And then you...
high compliment.
And then you remember our friendship starting with...
so I have a completely different origin date. One day, every day after that class, it was my end of school, and I had to literally like go walk to my car and leave. So I'm like booking it down this hallway, and then Will like slides up next to me and is like, "That story sucked, right? Like it wasn't just me." And I was like, "Thank you." It was. I don't remember what story it was. I've done a really good job of like wiping some of them from my memory.
I vaguely remember it because you said I met this person on campus,
and. So we just started, he's just started walking with me every day after class to, the parking garage. And we just started talking and chatting. And then, meeting up in between breaks to, talk and chat. And, we argued over, whether Greek food has seasoning and also like the worth of certain movies and books. And, you know, basically as our friendship is now, so it started. And then he was working for a company. He got me a job at that company.
Wait, before all that, I want everyone to know that he and I had a parasocial relationship.
Yeah, it is weird.
Through her, where I would tell her to tell him something. I never met him before.
Yeah, for some reason, for like 4 or 5 years, you guys were best friends, and me were close, but we never talked.
I just never bridged. I don't know. Yeah. Like, number one, neither of them was like, hey, can I have the other person's number? And also, because at this point, me and Katie were long distance best friends. Her grandparents had moved to Georgia, so when she wasn't in school, it's not like she was living in the same area as me. She was literally in fucking Georgia.
And she's in South Florida.
And I'm in South Florida. Will was like at my school, so I was seeing him all this. So like, oh yes, I was just going to invite you both over for tea. Or no, like here, the two of you who don't know each other, let's do it wasn't Zoom at the time. It was Skype. Skype. No, I didn't. But eventually, like, at 26, I think I started working at the company that Will was working for. And then we got Katie a job there. And that's when like those two just started talking on their own. And again, it was a really deep like they knew a lot of things about each other.
You did my resume.
Yeah, I did do that. I always have to redo people's resumes.
And then we all became friends.
We're 3 amigos now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and now they live very close to each other, and I live far away, so I come up and see them like twice a year.
We lived together for several years.
Yes, we did when we first moved up here. Katie came down from Georgia to...
Otherwise, I never would have come. I worked at a college library.
That she very much liked.
It was my favorite job.
Unfortunately, I took her away from it.
Don't ever feel... But she used to feel bad about it, and I'm just like, no, it's fine. I wanted to get out there and do things.
I wouldn't have met Juan.
No, Georgia, the place we were in, Georgia.
Got you a girlfriend, Juan. We're moving on to the next question. That's our origin story.
What's up?
That's how we met. Suridhian asked.
They have a mammoth as their profile.
Syrishan?
It might be if it's Irish. Petition to call it Khui. You got it.
Why Khui?
Khui is from the Ice Planet Barbarians.
Oh, okay.
I think I've heard some of y'all alluding to things you've written. I'm curious what you like to write and why.
Oh. Let's start from this end.
Well, the best writer, and then go down. Let's see. I like. I guess you would probably call it new adult in terms of like it was YA until I grew out of YA, and then I was like, I don't necessarily. All my stuff is way too violent to be YA anyway. I've said before that I kind of wish I could write exactly like Jacqueline Carey. And like that's kind of the kind of thing I want to write. It's like very second world fantasy is usually the thing I like. I have way more story ideas than I have time to write because I write really slowly. I'm like one of those perfectionist writers. It's really irritating. My biggest writing inspiration was A Song of Ice and Fire. So that's another one that like if
Shocker.
I could write... Yeah. Drink. But yeah, no, if I could write exactly like A Song of Ice and Fire, that's what like I aspire to. Is like that kind of very laconic, but also very descriptive at times. He has a really good mix of the two. His dialogue tends to be pretty good. I would talk about nipples less than he does. He also has a weird thing of talking about nipples like Dan Simmons. Another thing that I learned from that series is I really like to take a more grounded approach to things and then introduce a little bit of magic versus just adding a ton of magic on top.
That's too much, man.
Yeah, and I find you can get different. I had a whole video essay on this on my video essay channel that nobody watches.
Versus hard and soft magic, which is actually fantastic. Flash it on the screen right here. Editing will go.
Well, since I started with poetry, as both of these people would agree, I'm sure, I write in soliloquy. It's very long and descriptive. I used to get really worried that it would like edge into purple prose, but I don't think either one of these guys. I asked them both, and they say no.
Katie is annoying with how well she writes. She writes really well.
Her descriptions are
they're gorgeous,
achingly beautiful, and often sad. Like you'll have a description, and then you'll just be like, that fire now feels kind of sad. Like it was just written so beautifully that you're just like,
Me and Katie have written like a story together, or we wrote like at least half of it, and like I was always astounded by the amount of details you could put into the descriptions that like really grounded it and made it feel real.
Absolutely, like the cigarette smoke that stained the wall.
The crinklies the grandma kept in her bag.
Oh yeah,
that was another good one. Yeah, no, I have the problem that I run out of things to describe things. I'm like, he shrugged again.
Well, it's really hard filling those parts. I have a difficult time with dialogue tags. Sometimes I worry about that. Dialogue's always been my weak point. Prose in general with the narration, but I took like 1 million creative writing classes, just like these fools, to the point where I could have gotten a double major almost.
Really?
Yeah, I just needed like one more class, but I wasn't going to pay for that. Wait,
is it fantasy? Is it YA?
Yeah. Like, well, we all actually write pretty much the same genre, is the funny thing.
I usually like to side on horror lately, and by lately I mean the past like 4 years.
I wish I could write horror.
I don't write good, truly scary horror. Maria has mentioned the Annihilation series is, and
Southern Reach.
Yeah,
the Southern Reach trilogy.
I just would really like to be able to write in a subtly scary way that is not actually like bam, wow in your face, but when you picture it, it's really like intense. But yeah, I usually write like kind of mother-son relationships, mother-daughter relationships, but in a really metaphorical sense. Like, for example, a son that was like birthed a monster with a mother that doesn't know how to communicate with it. And
it's like that story.
Yeah, it's like the weird social relationship between like also feminine magic in the masculine. I've always enjoyed the gender play in what is feminine magic and what is masculine magic. So I really want to create a male character that uses feminine magic, and it makes him sort of mysterious and like, you know, dark and witchy.
I'm still waiting for you to finish that story.
Me too.
That one's a good one. I call it the Beowulf story.
I refer to it as the Grendel story. So
yes. Grendel is better. Yeah.
Me as a writer, I have evolved greatly. I used to be very super plot driven, like crazy plot,
and she also makes up names for things like. And it sounds good. It doesn't sound shitty or cheesy.
I was super plot driven. I used to like have a massive output. Like I once wrote 10,000 words in like 5 hours. Like, and I woke up as if from a fever dream.
Oh man, I've never experienced that.
The most I've ever written is 2,000 words in a day.
Yeah. Dialogue has always been a strong suit of mine, even when I like was young. But I always like. When I was younger, I remember I was in a creative writing club, and there was this girl named Francesca, and she wrote this really beautiful atmospheric, very similar to the kind of thing Katie would write. And everybody went crazy for it. And I was sitting there writing my genre fiction, YA, adventure. It was this, and I remember exactly the story. It was like these different clans that all had different elements, and there was like a war for power going on. And I'm in the middle of writing an action scene, like literally like a fight, a battle is happening. And I was like, and so I started trying, like I put that story to the side and I started trying to write something else. My creative writing teacher was like, Maria, you have gifts. You write really good. Like he was like, your fight scenes are some of the best, and you're literally in 6th grade. Like, please just
keep doing what you do.
Don't try to be something you're not.
I always struggle with that too, wanting to be like a serious writer.
Yeah.
And then being basically fanfic trash
and then
at the same
it
time.
Was shut up. It was funny because by the time I got to college, I no longer gave a shit about that. Because I remember I wrote a short story. It was supposed to be a novel, and it will eventually become a novel. I wrote it, and one in the circle, people were commenting on it, and this one girl said, I feel like I went to a bookstore, picked up a book off the shelf, and this was a published thing. Like this was a fantasy book that I just picked up and I want to read it. And I was thrilled. And I remember my creative writing teacher going, you know, that's not really where we want to aim for. We'd like to elevate, you know, genre fiction. And I literally was like, no, that is exactly what I wanted. I am glad it worked for you, my girl.
It's because it's considered low.
Professor Bujak, if you're watching this, your feedback was great because she gave me a lot of feedback for that story, and I did it. And I did everything she asked me to do. And she gave me back the final copy, and she goes, it just needs to be a novel. And I went, okay, I'm still working on it. What I've noticed as I've gotten older is I've slowed down as my reading tastes have slowed down, and I really enjoy the character-driven, like, and I'm still in my descriptions not super atmospheric, but that really a little bit more introspective, a slightly slower pace.
She wrote something. So we created with 2 other friends a quilt story. and we each wrote a chapter. And none of us continued with the same goddamn character, and I wish I had. Hers was the best writing she had made thus far. It was very, very, very good.
It was a woman walking through a marketplace.
But you were buying a bird ride.
And
like a chocobo.
Yeah, and
Chocobo.
So like
Chocobo.
Oh my gosh.
Chocobo. But yeah, so I've really slowed down with that. And my biggest problem right now is I haven't written in a really long time. I think the last time I sat down and wrote was like 2 years ago. Part of that is, and this is something I've been talking to Will about needing to work on, I don't leave myself any thinking time. And not even like writing time.
No.
I'm talking just that time to, because like I'm always listening to audiobooks or watching like video essays on YouTube. Like, and so there's no time to just percolate. Because like,
yeah, I used to specifically go out time, like, all right, I'm going to like think in my head for an hour and then listen to the audiobook, because you have to have that ruminating time.
And because I forced myself to do that for about a week, and ideas were there and they were coming. It's something that I want to get to, and but I currently I work
Life
a lot and I'm busy.
I just realized I was leaning away from you guys the whole time, like,
oh, yeah.
Girls.
Oh, also fantasy, YA, and sci-fi. I've gotten way more into sci-fi and even writing.
I think you're actually more into sci-fi than I am, is the funny part. Yeah, you're like into hard like sci-fi.
It started literally because I dated this dude named Ryan for a while.
How unfeminist of you.
And he recommended, we were talking about really good books, and he recommended Hyperion. He also recommended the Southern Reach trilogy. So thank you, Ryan.
We have a whole series on Hyperion. Go watch it.
And I am comfortable writing YA. I know he's moved more to young adult, and I think for me, it's really what the story needs. Like, if the story is a YA story, I'm going to tell the YA story, but if it's an older, audio, I think my one sci-fi thing that I want to turn into a novel, I don't think that would be YA. I think that would be more like young adult. I'm happy with that label, mainly because I was a really, and Katie will be able to speak to this, I was like a chubby, awkward young girl.
She was beautiful.
No,
shut the fuck up.
I was very awkward. I was pasty. I'm Greek, so I had those eyebrows and that mustache grew in real early. For me,
she was cute.
The Tamora Pierce books, Diana Wynne Jones, Garth Nix, all of those books inspired me and invigorated my life. And so the idea of being able to give another awkward 12-year-old girl a female character or just a story that she can love and aspire to, I'm here for it. So I respect YA for what it is. I'm okay with what it is. Well, yeah. And I'm willing, I will happily write it.
I think it's actually the most important novel is children's novels, because it helps you formulate.
It's literally, that's where you start your love of reading. And I would love to be that author for someone.
I started and finished, but I can't afford the illustrations for a little witch book for ages probably 6 to 7, thereabouts.
I'd say 6 to 9.
I suppose so. It's a little witch story as a metaphor or a parable, I suppose, for childhood abuse. So maybe one day.
I remember.
Maybe one day.
So Patreon questions. Claire Kinmill said, what would you like to achieve with this podcast? Simply have fun, inspire people to read more, or more critically, market your books when you write them, all or none of the above? For me, I do want to do more critical stuff. I have no, if I write and publish my books, I will let people know about it, but I don't want to be an author tuber. That, I'm not here for that. It's just, if I publish something, I'll be like, hey guys, I published. And if you read it, yeah. But I would like to, and this is something I was talking to Will about, and I mentioned to Katie at some point when I have more time. So if this podcast gets big enough that I don't have to work 40 hours a week, I'd like to do video essays exploring specific ideas, themes, analyzing book series for the things they do well, the things they don't do well, and specific, Will was talking about the hard magic versus soft magic. And I think there's a lot of interesting book series you could expand that on. Mm-hmm. And 3 of us have great insight. So I would love to do something like that.
I am just here to be with my friends.
We love you.
I really don't want anything else out of this. I'm just here to read. And it just so happens that we record and I get to potentially do the YouTube stuff I've always been interested in doing. I mean, everybody wants to express themselves on YouTube. So I wasn't really all that like into it. It's because I feel like if you have a talent like Will and you can like market it like that and share it with people, people love that parasocial relationship with people. So, I mean, I like receiving that like relationship from the people I watch. So it only I feel it makes sense to want to reach out the other way.
So can you read the question again? Because there was a part of it I thought was interesting.
What would you like to achieve? Simply have fun, inspire people to read more, or read more critically? Market your books when you write them? All or none of the above?
So, I mean, theoretically speaking, the marketing thing is nice in terms of like self-publishing is very lucrative. And like this, I could probably get like some people to read it. Though I was thinking the other day that basically I'm teaching people to pick apart a book I eventually write, and that's not a good idea. Like, no, I want a dumb audience to read it and like it versus a smart one. No, but my main thing is that, again, I mostly started because I just wanted to write better. And I found I wrote better when I read. And again, I'm incapable of not trying to monetize or get content out of anything I do in my life. I do think there's an extent to which trying to get people to think more critically is an interesting goal and something that I feel like we made a video on why AuthorTube sucks that we would probably never release because it's sort of a little incomplete. We were mostly just talking about it at the end of the Cyborg Tinkerer, and it could have been its own thing. But one of the things I talk about is just how lacking BookTube is in terms of actual analysis. A lot of it's fine, it's funny stuff. With Cindy, for example, is absolutely hilarious.
Wow. And she does Cindy? With Cindy.
With Cindy. She's a content. She reads a lot of the like Sarah J. Maas.
And then she also like fantasy, not fantasy, but she's funny, but she will take down a book. Like she literally read a bunch of passages from Sarah J. Maas' book to illustrate why she thinks it's bad. So like, cool.
No, she does that, right. And also she's not always trying to do analysis, but like I want to do analysis. Like, I push that on almost every video we do. I want to do more smart analysis because there's such a lack of it.
One of my favorite videos we've done is one of our most underperformed, is our Dune video. I think that has a lot of really smart analysis. And it just like happened because I didn't like it's a good book, but I had a lot of things I didn't like that I thought could have been better. And like Maria disliking something is way more analytical.
Also, it's nice that we can actually use our fucking degrees.
This is the most I've ever used my degree.
What's funny is that like I didn't actually learn anything about literature in college, which I know sounds funny, but like I mean, I
your
went
mother
to a community
set
college.
You up.
Yeah, my mom's hardcore is the thing. My mom is hardcore. I didn't really learn anything about how to do criticism or anything. But going back to it, I think if you look at film criticism or game criticism on YouTube, there is such a renaissance of it in terms of people talking about cinematography, themes, music, characters, editing.
I mean, I love the discussions, gameplay systems, how that adds to the experience.
Soundtrack.
Bomber guy just did his Deus Machina. I don't play video games. I don't care about them, but man, was that good analysis.
Yeah, no, he does. Like, there's a wealth of it, and when you look at BookTube, there is a complete dearth. It's all, hey, look, I have color-coded background bookshelves, and it's very Pinteresty, and come look at my book haul, which I don't understand why that's a thing, and maybe that's because, again, I'm a library pro, and I was just, like, always getting books from the library, but, like, it's a weird consumer thing to me, and so, like, and again, there is a place for that, and there's a place for the kind of lifestyle.
The author's gotta make money, Will.
The library buys some, and first of all, authors don't make money from publishing. All of that goes to publishing houses. But yeah, I just wish I really want more smart criticism of books, and I feel like there's such a lack of it on YouTube right now. So we're fighting the good fight.
We try to do that while also being,
To be fair, our bits are some of my favorite parts of videos. I'm going to put together a Hyperion collection that's just us doing bits.
Perfect. Next question. What is your view on separating art from the artist? It's a weird thing. So when I did literary criticism in my master's degree as well as in my undergrad, I always focused on like who the author was, the time period the author was writing from, and how those things influenced or affected the story. But then there were also times where I just did close readings of the text with no external like looking at. But one of the things, especially in my master program, that like you were really forced to do was the historiography surrounding a novel. So I've watched a ton of videos and I've thought about this a lot with the great J.K. Rowling, Joanne being a hobo and a half, and how I feel about those books. And I haven't read them as an adult and I want to go back and read them, but how to separate like her being complicated as well as like, Dan Simmons wasn't like, he didn't end up being like the bestest guy. And I love Hyperion. It's one of my favorite books. And so, I do think at a certain point you have to be able to make that separation, but I don't think you can discredit there is an influence in the text. Like Dan Simmons' sex scenes are a little weird. The way he deals with some of the religious aspects, a little weird, and so it's there. And I think you have to be cognizant of it, but you can allow yourself to enjoy things as long as you're, James Somerton did a really great one on his love for the Harry Potter world while being part of the LGBT community, and how he's tried to just like separate himself from like the financial side of it while still loving what those books did for him, like fundamentally. And again, that was the series that got me into reading. It doesn't hold like a super, like, you see no Harry Potter stuff in my decor. I've got way more Lord of the Rings influence than that. But so I find it pretty easy, but from a scholarship standpoint, I have to take that into consideration and what the implications are.
I have thoughts, so you go first.
I think about paintings more often with this, but it is, obviously any art form, you do have to, I think it's best to read a piece or, in the case of books, appreciate the art or if it is art, for what it is, and to analyze it that way to what you think the author's doing, and then go and study the author. So that way you can kind of have that dichotomy between the neutral experience and experience the art for what it is, and then understanding the background. Because I think it's like, if we never analyzed the time period, the social,
Situation.
Yeah, exactly. Then we can't learn from things and understand, like Will said, critically analyze what's going on. That's important. It's like philosophy. So that's just my feeling on it.
So I think when people talk about separating the art from the artist, what they mean is when the author is a dick, like
Yes.
J.K. Rowling, can you still enjoy their worlds?
Death of the author.
So I think that's a good question. I'm going to go into a little bit more in a second, but I think what I found for myself is I've thought about this question a lot, but what I found is and I've just settled into this, and this is just how I feel regardless of how much I think about it. I can separate the two pretty easily. Roman Polanski, I think, makes good movies. And, he's a terrible dude. And, I can intellectually understand arguments for why you might or might not want to read something by someone. But for me, I inherently separate it. And I do think that's different depending on your relationship. If it's something like traumatic, for example, I don't judge people who are I can't read J.K. Rowling now. I also don't think there's any ethical consumption under late stage capitalism. So also very true. Whatever. I think there's a greater question to be made about the author's role in the text, because everything paratextual does have an effect on the text down to the font. And I think the author is part of that paratextual experience. And I think Absolutely. Even when you don't know anything about the author, you create a para-author in your mind. Mm-hmm. So, I have certain ideas about the girl and the nightingale, the bear and the nightingale. The bear and the nightingale. I know nothing about that author, but I have feelings about what that author is looks like, thinks, that kind of stuff. And it was something that came up a lot when I was originally in the social justice movement 10 years ago. I've seen the movement change a lot, but one of the things back then is they would always be like, look, we're not criticizing the author, we're criticizing what they wrote. But a lot of times, and I think that's true, it's true to an extent, but also a lot of times in criticizing the author, they would create... So what it was is they would be like, okay, we don't know the author's intention, we only know what they wrote. But what's weird is they would kind of create a para-author that they would then criticize without actually treating the book as its own thing. So they create an author with intention almost.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a weird idea. I think that the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that writers do not write the book that's in their head. They write a book that's close to it. I found that with writing is that the story in my head, sometimes the way I thought of it in my head wasn't offensive, but then the way I wrote it was, because that's just how it came out. And you have to realize that what you wrote is not exactly the story you have in your head. And you can see this sometimes in sequels, because readers like the story that you wrote. But sometimes the story that you wrote isn't exactly the one in your head. And so when you have a character do something in the sequel and people are like, that's out of character, for the author, it isn't, because that was the story they had in their head versus the one
that the readers ended up
and sometimes there's a bit of a dissonance between the two.
Yeah.
And so I think that you always will, I think, consider the author in the text, regardless of whether you know anything about the author, because again, you'll just create a para-author. Part of it is that I'm different than you guys, I've noticed, in that you guys get really irritated with characters and I get really irritated with authors. Like, I'm always surprised when I have a strong emotional reaction to a character, like Melisande in Khui 2. What a bitch.
I get mad when authors fuck up characters.
That's true.
So, like, with Black Sun, this author had a great set of characters she wasted. And because I can acknowledge when a character is doing something I don't like, but they're doing it within their character arc.
Yeah.
So, like, young, to use Khui, young Phaedra. I fucking hated young Phaedra. What a pain in the dick.
So
but that's what Jacqueline Carey was trying to write, and there was a reason for it. What I don't like is when, suddenly the characters are doing like
really dumb things.
Season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Oh god,
don't worry
let's
about
not
it.
even talk about it.
Take a shot. Next.
Oh, this is Data, by the way.
Shalana Medford said,
a darkly plotting cat.
"This is my baby." Oh, he's gonna disappear into Katie.
He's disappearing.
Are you coming to mom? Shalana Medford said, "Which video was the most fun for you guys to do? Which one was the least fun?"
I really liked the Sandcastle comic versus the old movie, honestly. Like, I
haven't rewatched any of the really early ones.
That one was so funny because the movie was so bad.
That's back when I was like, no summary, because I don't want to just summarize. You're not supposed to do that in essays. And then later I was like, actually, no, we're really funny when we summarize. And also, not everybody has read a book. That is such a baby.
It is a baby.
He's such a baby.
This Cyborg Tinkerer.
That
was really fun.
Was fun.
My favorite, and it's just because in the recording of it, I laughed so hard, was the Savior's Champion video. It was the first one that I did an actual like plot summary for, like a real plot summary. So it was the beginning of like understanding what I am as a narrator of plot summaries. That one was really fun. I also Priest's Tale.
That was fun too.
Super fun.
Which is hilarious for being such a depressing story.
It was such a depressing story, but we had such a good time with that one. My least favorite was Children of Blood and Bone. It was okay. It was fine. It just like video wise, like there was no real bits in it or.
Yeah, no, there weren't any great bits. My favorite to do was the second Ice Planet Barbarians we did.
That was really good with Amanda.
Just because we laughed so much.
We did. Actually, you're right. That one was really fun.
That was a lot of fun. My least favorite one to do was either Children of Blood and Bone or, honestly, The Savior's Sister. Because I was sick at the time, and also I came out of it feeling like it wasn't very good, because I felt like it wasn't very funny.
Like the first one.
And we kind of lost the plot a little bit, I felt like. The video ended up good.
Being great.
Yeah.
I that one wasn't as fun to film. Like, it actually felt like work doing Savior's Sister.
Yeah, it was kind of grueling.
I hated Iron Widow.
Yeah.
Like filming it?
Yeah, I hated it. Also, I didn't finish the book, so that made it hard.
Draco Nako said, what were your favorite and least favorite books that you've read?
Well, okay, so that is a little different.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can pick one. I've really liked Hyperion, and I've really liked the Khui books.
Gideon the Ninth.
Gideon the Ninth was good. We didn't do a video on it because it was a Patreon live stream, and the audio ended up really jank. But that was a really good book.
And Axiom's End were... And Last Graduate was very fun.
Yeah. Really
good. I enjoyed it. I think as far as like just favorite book since I've started that I hadn't read previously, I would say Gideon the Ninth. It was just really good. Least favorite? Cyborg Tank.
I found The Savior's Sister hardest to get through.
Iron Widow.
Iron Widow is
It's really the only one I didn't finish. People called me out on like, how are you critiquing this when you didn't finish it? That's a fair point. But also, I listened to criticisms of the end that I didn't read. I read 3/4 of it. And everything else was still applicable for the beginning.
What's a common factor in all the books you've disliked?
Poor
Not
characters.
Great world building.
Yeah.
For me, it's, authors setting the deck for the characters.
And then
I hate when I can see the author's hands. Anything that's unsubtle or like, look at this bitchy rival. And I'm like, I'm on the bitchy rival side. I don't care how they could be a Nazi. And I'm okay
or missed opportunity.
Yeah, those too. Like, and that's why I say like world building, when the world building and the way the characters fit into the world is really weak. There's so many missed opportunities, especially if it's like for me, the world building in Iron Widow was such a missed opportunity. It's such a cool concept, but the world felt really like,
horrible manga-y, like low class manga.
It wasn't deep. Common factor in the books you've liked. great world building and good character work.
Good prose, good atmosphere for me.
Pace, good pace.
Pace is really
but some of the bad books we've read that I didn't like had good pace. So pace isn't, because like I can do a slower pace and be fine.
Genuine originality of ideas.
We just got a new patron. Hi, Ice Willow.
Hi, Ice Willow.
Real time.
Yay! That's so cool. Oh, we scared the baby. Okay, what's your favorite nonfiction book?
So I actually have an easy one. There's one called 1491 and 1492, which are about the pre-Columbian civilizations and how advanced they were, and how little we know about it. And then the second book he did, 1492, is about the mixing of cultures. We think of the Columbian exchange as being a European and Native American one, but actually it was all over the world, and it was largely an African and Native American one in like Portugal, for example. And he talks about how, like, you know, there could have been samurai in Mexico. The time periods actually match up correctly, and the Spanish Empire was in the Philippines at the time. They're absolutely fascinating, both from a world building perspective, from the perspective of not knowing a lot of these things. Pre-Columbian civilizations have just some crazy cool concepts. Absolutely. And then also, he just writes really well. He was a journalist, so he writes in a non-boring way. So those are my two favorite.
My favorite is, and I even did a little thing with the library I used to work at, Her Body Himself by, can you go back there? I'm forgetting their name. Excuse me.
C.J. Clover.
C.J. Clover. It's analysis on gender in horror movies, especially slasher fics. The phallic nature of them, the, you know, final girl stuff. It's really, really fun. I took a horror class, and it was one of my most favorite times in my life. So I really, really like that book. But I also like Sukiyon. It's a whole bunch of short stories, anthology about culture in I think it's the Philippines. And it's about this creature it's a female creature that essentially drains the life force of men, but it's all about
nonfiction.
It's a metaphor. It's all about the poverty there. And
interesting.
Yeah. My favorite is this book by, it's the first one that popped into my head. It's called Engendering Faith. It is a collection of journal articles and academic publishings all on one topic, which is the relationship of Buddhism to women in specifically the Heian era of Japan. And because that's what I studied. I had been writing a thesis in college. And
trust me, I wrote a lot of that thesis.
You edited the night before.
I was writing specifically about how I was reading a bunch of ladies' diaries and analyzing it for religion.
She told me a lot about it.
And I couldn't find a lot of academic work on the topic, and I needed it because I was writing a thesis. You can't just react to the documents. You have to have other people's voices in it. And I found this anthology, it's not an anthology, but a collection.
Didn't you ask the author?
I did. Well, no, I emailed the author to say, I found your book. I had to order it from a different university to my university, but it has made such a huge difference. This is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much for doing the work. Her name is Barbara Ruck. She responded back, and she sent me copies of the book for me and my university. So my university had I donated it to the library.
So Barb's, what a bro move.
Oh my God, it was fantastic. And it's just such a great collection. And really, because there was this idea, especially then, that women didn't have a huge, Buddhism didn't look kindly upon the women, there wasn't a super positive relationship. And this was a bunch of people questioning that and critiquing that idea, and how religion did play a part, and women were playing a part in religion. The first Buddhists in Japan were 3 nuns who came over from Korea. And so it was just amazing, and I loved it. And again, it's just recontextualizing history. Favorite book you read as a kid? This is a good one. Garth Nix's Sabriel.
That was really good.
I really loved it.
Tithe by Holly Black.
I can't. I'm sure there was one, but I don't remember what it was. I mean, A Song of Ice and Fire when I was 14 or 15. It's pretty much the first one I remember being oh, that's what's
my
up.
favorite technically was Heidi. As a child, I reread that book 4 times.
Lightness 8010 says, congrats on the channel growth. You guys definitely deserve it. A question I have would be, what is more important generally for you as an individual reader? Good characters or good plot?
Both.
I increasingly think it's character.
Yeah.
This is the only reason Marvel is still in business is because they're very good at hiring good actors to get fun characters.
That's a great example, too.
Because that's what people remember. People don't, especially with movies, less so with literature, but people remember the characters that they love, and they will go through.
A great example is his recollection of spinning silver.
Yeah, that's true. I still think about Miriam as like a badass.
But he did not enjoy the plot.
Yeah, I did not enjoy the experience of the plot.
There's 2 movies that come to mind. One is The Lighthouse.
I've never seen it.
Oh, there's like no plot in it, but it's fully character driven. And it's absolutely like, it's interesting. And then the other one is this break-in, like it's a horror film where this guy is a murderer and he's trying to break into this deaf woman's house. And
I didn't like that one.
It's subpar. But
Well, did you like the character?
Well, she drove it. There's literally no dialogue in the entire movie except for at the beginning because he's pretty silent too because she's deaf. I think she drove that just through her facial and everything. And the fact that there's no dialogue in the whole movie and it's a break and enter, like it's not special. It still did it for me.
Yeah, it works.
I'd like to know what your favorite books are currently and why.
I don't know if I have
A
Song of Ice and Fire.
Hyperion, the first one, has a very special place in my heart. And I think currently it is one of my favorite books.
That's a legit pick.
I don't have a favorite book.
Okay. Next, would you guys consider reading something contemporary? It depends on what you mean by contemporary.
No.
Because
it's Will's channel, and he's going to decide,
it's
good luck
all
to
of our
us.
channels. I just won't edit the video. One thing I will say is that it's very funny. In fanfic, I will read contemporary AUs constantly. But like, I literally don't understand the appeal of reading something contemporary in actual fiction. I'm like...
No, you know what I love? I would love to read a serial killer one.
Oh, that would be interesting.
That would be fun.
But it would be better if it was like an eldritch serial killer.
Oh, this is good for Katie and Will. What fanfics do you guys read? Like what fandoms?
Okay, let me get my...
I was primarily in 2 fandoms. When I was... I'm editing that out.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
He's never going to admit the pair.
Fine. Will had a very special pairing he liked.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, no, my first one when I was 16 was Naruto. I wrote a bunch in that one, and I read a bunch. A little bit with Bleach and...
Maria and I wrote a fan fiction together.
Bleach, Last Airbender, I read a lot of, and I only wrote a little bit of, and a little Final Fantasy. And then a few years ago, it was A Song of Ice and Fire, specifically one pairing that will go unnamed
forever,
that I'm really into. But if you look on fanfic.net, you will see that it has the most fanfics. What's up? You know, the thing is, one thing I've learned over time is that you really like certain character archetypes, and if a character fits those, you'll write them. This is like when I was young, it bothered me that like slash fic existed. Because I'm like, but the characters aren't gay. I don't get it. Why are they into each other? And then what I just learned is that like people just like the pairings, that they like the dynamics they like, and they will just fit characters into them, and that's fine. I will read books that like there's not a romantic connection between 2 characters, but I'm like, oh, but wouldn't it be good if there was?
These 2.
Oh my God, Marvel.
I love
Marvel got the most use out of. Okay, no.
Okay, we're not. Okay, never mind.
If he can't admit it, I don't want to admit it.
Marvel, lots of Marvel.
Let me just tell you, all the Tony Stark fan fiction. I even read an AU where he actually lost his fortune because he got kicked out of the house, and he became a mechanic for the army. And him and Pepper ended up together.
I've read that one specific one.
I know it's really.
It's funny.
Really. Really good. And so anyway, Marvel, I mean, I honestly, what fan fiction haven't I read? I think I've read the widest array out of, I think.
Absolutely. She's done,
I will admit, once upon a time, I read a TMNT fan fiction. I've read a Cirque du Freak fan fiction.
They have like prehensile dicks to reach out of the shell.
She knows.
I didn't read any sex ones, actually. Luckily.
You're boring. Just say that.
I have read a Pope. And what was it? A Pope and what was it?
She's read a lot of, like, if it exists and she's watched the movie for it, she's read
it. See, I tend not to go out of my fandoms and pairings. Like, I'm very, like, kind of strict with that, whereas you'll just read.
She cast a wide net.
I mean, I think I've literally looked up historical fan fiction. I literally have gone into historical fan fiction.
It's very funny.
Maria and I genuinely discussed making a fan fiction for Cecil Rhodes. And what was his general?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
Because they were actually secretly, like, kind of, like, gay for each other. And you can read it in their letters to each other. And it's so great. And at the grave, there are even rainbow lizards, which we made fun of. It's because it was like they're celebrating after the death. They're like his spirit.
What are some tropes, details, and books you used to like but not anymore?
I thought this was a really good question, but I couldn't remember any, so I was hoping you could.
Forget what it's called, but like when one character that's like in love gets kidnapped or hurt really badly. Hurt comfort. And the other one's like, let me take care of you. I love you. I miss you so much. Or like, I'm so worried about you. Let me defend you by killing the attacker. It's so trite now.
I used to really like...
I'm too.
I used to really like enemies to lovers. But
oh my God, did she?
As I've gotten older, I find it's rarely well done. I never buy.
I agree with that. I like a good one, but it's
I like a good one, but very rarely do you actually win me over and make me think that they've gone enemies to lovers. I used to like a faster paced romance, and now, as we know, I am a slow burn bitch. I used to like a lot of drama. I was here for like love triangles, like, and I'm talking like
never.
Middle school Maria was here for a love triangle. But then I read Twilight, and that killed any.
Oh my God, it was so bad.
And since then, I hate a love triangle.
It's so
I'm not
awful.
here for it. Another thing that I am here for polyamorous relationships, but I don't like, so far I've read, the only times I've seen polyamorous relationships is where it looks like it's going to be a love triangle and then it ends up being a polyamorous relationship.
But the consent issues.
It's just, it hasn't been well done yet.
Yeah, we've read it in 2 books and we haven't liked either one.
Well done. Like, somebody write me a good polyamorous relationship. I'm here for it. What book has impacted you the most through your whole lifetime and why? So not your favorite, but what's the greatest impact? We know his answer. Like, come on. Take the shot preemptively. Like, we don't even have to say it. If you don't know at this point, then you don't know. Tithe.
Yeah, probably. It was the baseline of my inspiration. Specifically, the subtle, gory details.
Yep. The way her descriptions are. I've started rereading it a couple months ago because we're supposed to do a video on it, but it doesn't have an audiobook, which means it's impossible for me to get through.
There's this line in the beginning, and Kay, the main character, is walking next to a pier in the ocean in New Jersey. And she's secretly a pixie, but spoiler. And she is saying to her friend who thinks she's a little weird that she hasn't seen in a couple years, she's looking up at the sunset and she's like, and then the moon's out in the sky and she says, the sun looks like it's slit its wrists and the blood is all over like the water and the moon must have driven him to it type of thing. And it's like so... Like, it's so good.
Yeah,
you can feel it's because Katie is a way better descriptive writer than Holly Black. Absolutely. Like, I was reading it. I could see how those descriptions inspired a young poetic Katie, and we ended up where we did. So as an inspiration, Katie's a better descriptive writer than Holly Black. I don't know. This is something I'd have to think about, and I did not think about it before this moment. So if I think of one...
If one doesn't spring to mind, then it probably isn't. Like, yeah. I'm sure there are other books that were very foundational to me as a child, but A Song of Ice and Fire is such, like, a gravity point.
A lot of Tamora Pierce's works, as far as, like, what I wanted to write.
Yeah.
Have I ever told you about it? I don't really like Tamora Pierce.
I know.
Well, whatever.
You've never said it, but I know. Also, honestly, Garth Nick Sabriel was pretty huge. And it was the first time that I realized that, like, you could write a book that was aimed towards kids, but it felt very adult, and, like, both could enjoy it, and then, yeah. So maybe those guys. What are your guilty pleasure tropes?
I have a couple, but I think we should make Katie go first.
No, it's too inappropriate. Right now, a guilty pleasure trope is having one character, like, way, like, low-key, be really skilled or be really powerful or advanced in some way. But it's not, like, overtly done. Instead, it's done, like, choices in the plot. And then slowly but surely, like, in one scene in particular, they pop up as, like, and they balloon. And the other character's like, damn, son. Like, I love that trope.
For me, it's the slow burn, but that period of a slow burn where, like, their hands brush. And, like, it's like... like they haven't, neither of them have admitted, but they're both into each other, but they're both pretending to be friends, and like everything's fine. Oh man, that like candy ache. I talked about it in Axiom's End. Also, another one of my favorite tropes that is in Axiom's End. Monster boyfriend.
Oh yeah.
Yes, she's monster boyfriend
trash.
Oh, I thought you guys were going to forget about me.
Nope.
I'm trying to think of which ones I'm guilty about. Pretty much any of the romantic ones I don't like to admit to, but I'm all really into.
You're really into AU tropes.
Yeah, but I'm not really ashamed of that one.
Oh, guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure, yeah. Like her comfort is one that I consider a guilty pleasure. Some gendered stuff I kind of consider like more of a guilty pleasure because it's like, I don't know. I consider it a bit of a guilty pleasure just because it feels a little unfeminist at times in terms of the stuff I like. Yeah, that's probably about it.
Okay. To each of you, what is something you're passionate about but hasn't come up in your videos? And then what is one trait you like in each other?
That's cute.
Will, go ahead and start this one.
I am really into making tabletop miniatures, specifically for Warhammer and other war games. I actually have a whole channel that has 17,000 subscribers, so more than this one, where I convert them into different things. I'm really into it. I've never really talked about it on here because it's just not relevant. But yeah, I'm really into that.
And what about the traits
that you like in us?
So this is going to sound a little funny.
Oh God, what does that even
I'm
mean?
ready. I'm prepared.
For Maria, I really like how into herself she is. Like, it's not even that. It's not even into herself, but she's just so happy to be herself sometimes.
Yeah,
like I'll see her on camera and she'll just be happy and she'll be like into being herself. And I'm like, I wish I could feel like that someday, like ever. So that's like one that I just find, it's a weird one, but I really appreciate that about her. And for Katie, there's like a constellation of them. I really like how...
Oh, that was a pretty phrase to say.
Yeah, look at that.
They're all kind of tightly grouped. I really like how intelligent you are. I really like that you have such a lyrical soul.
Yes.
And it comes through in so many ways. It's filtered through a middle school boy's sense of humor.
Yes.
But...
You said that last night.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's true.
And you have such understanding and such empathy, I think, at least you've always had for me. And I think that's such a great trait. And I love you.
I love you too.
My heart. The problem is if you haven't guessed by now, I suffer from some sad things. And it really keeps me from enjoying things in my life. So I don't have a lot of passions. But what I do really like at the moment is really like, I like making up D&D characters at large. Like I have 20 of them now. It's just super fun to create characters and NPCs for my one friend's her campaign. And I've been having a ton of fun with that. And then besides that, when I'm at my best, I also like growing really a lot of plants.
Yeah.
I have a
little gardener.
Yeah. I try my best, but then in my worst weeks, I sluggish, they suffer a little. And then lastly, training my dog. My dog is an Aussie Shepherd, so he requires lots of exercising. So we're working on instant verbal commands.
Okay, favorite traits in us. Go, bitch.
Oh, right. I like how smart Maria is. Maria is
Thank you.
Yes. Maria knows a lot about a lot, and I think my favorite trait has got to be how easy she can cook. It's because no, it's cool.
True.
It's really cool.
I didn't mention it, but I actually do love Maria's mother henness as well.
Well, not just mother henness. I mean, literally her smartness in cooking. She knows exactly what flavor will affect something in such small ways. And it's probably a lot from her mom, because her mom is a very, very good.
Well, it's genetic. She's Greek.
Well, no. Okay. No. Well, maybe. She also just has acquired that through her own passion. And I think that's really cool. And then for Will, I like how Will's a really great listener. And he's also super funny. He it's a lot of fucking what's the word I'm looking for? Misogynistic jokes, but it's all in good fun. It's because he knows we'll roll our eyes to it. And he also
He's also looking to get a rise.
Yes, he is. He likes being
troll.
contrary.
He's such a troll.
But so like he's really, really a great listener and a very loyal friend. So like that's a really nice thing.
Yeah. I like to sew, and I was going to say cooking. I love cooking. It's something that I really enjoy doing. My boyfriend happens to be a chef, so we've done a lot of cool stuff in the kitchen lately. And it's super important to my life. I've been sewing since I was like 16, I think. Though it happens in like bursts where like I'll sew something and then I won't sew again for 2 years, and I'm trying to change that. But then we started this channel. And so that has sucked up a lot of time.
In the past, she like made full on like replicas of old styled dresses.
Yeah, I did historical reenactment for some years.
And then she also made our Star Wars cosplay.
And then my favorite traits for Katie, when she is excited about something, there is this effervescence that is like incredibly infectious. Someone once described her as like a fairy and a Doctor Who companion.
And that person was Maria?
No, it was Nick.
Oh, okay.
I find that very accurate. She just has this like, in fact, like when Katie like laughs full belly, like you have to laugh. And she commits to like the silliest, funnest things. And then just, I don't know, the way she like experiences the world is really different. But the way she describes it is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely not pretty.
Yeah. And then for Will has this like incredibly groundedness to him, that I like have like turned to a lot, but also like is a huge part of our friendship. And also like the kinds of conversations I have with Will regularly are like the only time like I'll have those conversations. Like Katie and I, when we were young and we'd talk about books, it was us squeeing. Like, you know, like, I love, you know, like just like pure hysterical enjoyment of the thing. And then with Will, it would be like
critic.
Because he'd be like, no, I didn't like it that much. And I'd be like, well, did you think about that? And like, you know, back and forth. And so like he forces that like analytical side out.
It's your mom's voice.
Which is funny because I hate conflict so much.
Yeah, but he comes like you'll be like, I really like this thing, and he'll be like, I didn't think it was that good, and like he doesn't have to say that, but he does. So like, does he hate conflict? Who knows? But yeah, so like those are all really like important things that I appreciate in both of you.
Very nice.
I think we all appreciate each other quite a bit.
Yeah,
I think as you get older, you appreciate the qualities of your friends more.
In your life. What are some books being released this year that you guys are looking forward to reading for pleasure for the podcast? The third book of the...
Oh, you're right.
The book that comes after Last Graduate.
The Scholomance.
The Scholomance. The third book in the Scholomance series. And then the third, I don't know if it's coming out this year. I don't know when it's coming out. I'm going to let a cat in. Give me a sec, guys. Yeah. I don't know when it's coming out, but third one in Lindsay Ellis's.
Yeah, that one I'm looking forward to reading. I otherwise don't actually keep up with current books at all. The only reason I keep up even slightly with it is for like algorithm reasons. I'd like to do books that come out so we can get like more views, but otherwise everything I want to read came out at least 3 years ago or earlier.
I try like look up stuff that are coming out just so like we can do like more current things sometimes. And also just because when I was reading a lot before the podcast, Audible would be like, I recommend this book. And I'd go, okay. And it would have just come out recently, which is how I found Deadly Education. Right. Are there any books coming out this year that you are interested in?
No.
And do you speak any other languages? If so, do you prefer to read books in their original language when you can? No.
I speak Spanish. Well, I used to speak it more. Now I can understand it like entirely because I grew up with it. And I've read books in Spanish. Reading Harry Potter in Spanish is pretty funny because Spanish is such a more graceful language than English. I've never read a book originally written in Spanish. But, well, no, that's not true. I've read some of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who just writes beautifully. I think it's always better to read something in the original language because the medium is the message. But I don't think it's entirely necessary if you get a good translation.
I have wasted all the languages I attempted to learn. Maria and I learned Japanese. She much longer than I. And then I learned also Spanish. Don't use that. Not that it would be a read language, but I learned ASL. Haven't used that. Oh, Old English.
Oh, okay.
I could I could read. We had to read Beowulf in Old English, and we had to write an essay on it using only Old English. That's
hilarious.
It's because our professor was ancient, and
she was around for it.
She was in the 80s. She was in her 80s.
Oh, wow.
And she looked like it, and she was literally, she got her schooling in the oldest college in America, and it's like a castle. So cool. It only kind of made sense.
One thing I will say is I think it depends on how far the language is also from your language. So I think a lot of Romance languages, a translation is pretty straightforward. Whereas if you look at something like, I know a lot of Asian languages and like Japanese, there's a poetry to like, and there are inside jokes with like what they're not called kanji. I forget what they're called, but like what the characters look like other characters.
No, kanji. It is kanji.
Yeah, kanji. And like, you know, it sounds a very specific way and it's written in a very specific cadence.
And you lose that.
Yeah, and you lose that in a translation. I've never read one of those.
There was, when I would do my, when I was reading the diaries by the Heian era Japanese ladies, there was a lot of like inside jokes that were lost in translation that I would get out of the footnotes. Like ladies would just talk about like their sleeves being wet. And you'd be like, why are their sleeves wet all the time? And it was a metaphor for them crying. Like but they never talked about crying. It was just their sleeves were wet. And so those kinds of things. And I was studying Japanese actually to eventually be able to learn ancient Japanese so I could study these things myself. And then after I got my master's and I realized that getting a job as a professor in the United States is nearly impossible right now and incredibly competitive.
And as you can see, Maria's doing quite well for herself right now.
Yeah, I have two friends with doctorates who they haven't gotten tenure track contract positions. They're adjuncting. So I was like, nah, I need and that's why I would love to go get my doctorate from like, I love being in academia. But it would only be if this podcast gave me the time to do so. And I would be able to use that stuff that I learned there for here. I wanted to ask what his favorite Song of Ice and Fire character is.
You know, that's actually hard. Because I actually don't necessarily think I have a single favorite character. I think the way he writes Tyrion is really cool. And clearly he's Martin's favorite, so he gets a lot of attention. I really like the way he writes Arianne, but she's not... You know, she's only had like 3 viewpoint chapters. Honestly, a lot of the prologue characters, I love reading their, even if they're not good characters, I love, oh, hey, kid. Hey. A lot of the prologue characters, I really love their viewpoints because they're so thematic and they always die horribly at the end of the prologue. So like Varamir, I think in A Dance of Dragons, I think that's a great, like just little short character piece. Because he's such a piece of shit.
The person who asked that question also asked if we would do... Katie's never read the books, but she likes the show. And Will's likes the books, but doesn't like the show. If they did,
he's
like,
doing the suckling.
If we did a read-along, yeah, he's going to fuck off in like 10 seconds. Once he starts suckling fingers, the amount of time he sits on a lap greatly shortens.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
And with that...
Oh, join our Patreon. We have a
Patreon. Support the channel. Comment. Yeah, if you leave a comment here, we'll try to answer any questions you have. So leave a comment for engagement reasons.
We hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. And, you know, maybe we'll do it again in the future.
Bye.
Bye.